All right, folks, it's Steve, and this is the Rogue Scholar, and I have my good friend Esha joining me today. And let me explain to you what the point of this whole conversation today is going
By
to
the
be.
way, I love the intro music. I was like dancing to
Thank
it.
you. What this talk with you, Esha, to me is
Mhm.
super important because obviously we have an entire movement out there that kind of is going with a lot of current events and they're just sort of rolling with whatever is thrown at them in the media. And so for me, this became a huge issue because what I see and as I have come to being a lefty later in life, okay, I've seen the value of not only history, but beginning to learn and understand theory and beginning to understand the arc, what I call the arc of revolution, and understanding, a little bit. I'm not like perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm really starting to get a handle on dialectical materialism. I know it's got some problems and so forth. It's not a complete picture, but it's a really good way of kind of analyzing systems and structures and circumstances, so that you have a baseline for how to judge history and how to move forward. And so I wanted to bring you on, I guess, to start with. And I have this nice little outline. I'll just read, start us off because I think this is important. Do you feel like history, historical materialism, and dialectical materialism are a necessary uh, entry point for leftists to really develop a full understanding of what it means to be a lefty?
I would go deeper than that. I would say it's necessary just to understand the world as it is. You can't understand the world as it is without both historical materialism and dialectical materialism.
What can you describe? I guess tell us what exactly is historical materialism and dialectical materialism. Can you explain that?
Sure, but I can do one better. I will read from a better explanation. Give me just 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. Oops. But basically, well, let me talk about this is one thing. I call the opposite of historical materialism historical mordorism. Let me give you an example. So so we all know there was World War II and Germany was the bad guy. So did the minute the red flag got planted on the Reichstag, did all the Nazis just go whoosh, like orcs? Or like whatever happened to after the Ring of Fire? Or what happened to them? Well, if you kind of remember that a lot of them didn't just vaporize, suddenly you have to look at why did West Germany suddenly be who made up the leadership of West Germany? We have written an article, 2 articles in historically about this, and it starts feeling more and more uncomfortable. Like, oh, so West Germany, 77% of them were former Nazis. And the guy who was in charge of NATO for a while, Adolf Heusinger, so when you don't have historical materialism, you can kind of like you can separate like things and start believing in historical mordorism, which then makes it that you don't understand the world and you may not be supporting the right causes or the right people. You might be involved in a lot of really just unthinkable things. So that's the opposite of historical materialism. So let's start with dialectical materialism. Dialectic means in Greek, like I forgot what it meant in Greek. Greek to discourse or to debate. Okay, and material. Okay, so I hate bringing up this word, but I know a lot of lefties who are online know this. I don't want to bring this person up. I hate it. Okay, let me just quick go for it. Okay, did anyone see the debate between Whoosh, Vosh, and non-compete last week?
No.
Oh, thank God. Okay, Vosh. Oh God. Okay, but basically, what you saw was that Vosh was just thinking up hypotheticals in order to determine what was going on. And these hypotheticals will never come to fruition. And that's what people before, like Hume and all the classic enlightenmentists or enlightenment liberals or whatever you want to call them, they thought that if you were intellectuals and you just sat around and thought about ideas, suddenly you'll know what to do. And Hegel and this kind of thing is called idealism. And Hegel was an idealist, but he thought of the idea of dialectics when it comes to, I guess, debating what to do with society with your bright ideas. Well, Marx and Engels took the idea of dialectics as where you put two opposite ideas together and then see what the contradictions are. And then arrive at the truth by having the contradictions fall out, kind of like the logic stuff. But for materialism is things that they are not inside your head. They are things external to you that's about the world that can be observed, like this, whatever, my niece's circle toy or my lipstick. And so the idea is, so once you have to study them and understand them, and then you can kind of see how societies or nature works. So one thing is that you have to remember that nature, as in, we are part of nature, of course, and it's connected. And there's also, nature is basically in a continuous state of change. Like, for example, walls, if there's a little bit of a vibration on the street, every day, each single vibration won't make the wall collapse. But 20 years later, it can add up and cause it it can collapse.
Sure.
So these are quantitative, every time there's a little vibration, these are quantitative changes. It may, you won't be able to observe it, but many of these quantitative changes, it will eventually lead to a qualitative change, something that you can observe. And then you have to also remember that contradictions happen. And a lot of this is how you solve contradiction. And so you have to start with objective reality. So, for example, I can't be for example, if I want to run a marathon, I need to start with objective reality. I can only run about 5K. So that is the objective reality. It doesn't mean I can't run a marathon. It's just that I need to go through some training with whatever, and it'll take some time in order to be able to run a marathon. And governments is human civilization is more or less just a system within nature that has been constructed, and you can understand it through what happened in history. For example, humans were hunters and gatherers, but then what happened is that they noticed that if you kind of have your, vegetables or your wheat close to you, less animals eat it. And then they learned about deep sowing. Then they started doing agriculture. And with that, with civilization, you then got a primitive economy where you had a division of labor, as in somebody plows and somebody else makes the plow. And so this division of labor allowed us to make more food and support more people and so forth. And you can actually study in each phase how the labor was divided and how it became more divided and more people were needed to do the tasks. We also need less labor overall since 1,000 years ago, because 1,000 years ago, a lot of us had to be in farming. Now, very few of us have to do it because a lot of the farming tasks have been automated. So I guess that the way you study the world by looking at what exists, how it changed, what used to exist, how it changed, and the mechanism in which the thing changed is a lot of dialectical materialism.
So what you're saying to me basically is that you watch the arc of change, you see all the things that came into it, you establish that these things had to happen for this to go from this stage
Mhm.
to this stage, and all of that kind of goes into your analysis of what is and what was and so forth. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, like I don't believe in magic. So if, for example, you have, I don't know, like anything. Yeah. If for example, you have this kind of wheat crop, but then there is this kind of wheat crop. It didn't magically pop up. We have to figure out, oh, was this corporation genetically engineering this? What is this wheat crop? So on.
Monsanto, huh?
Exactly. So a lot of, and in the West, they want to make it seem like just things happen because, well, you're not going to like the mechanism in which they happen. I love how World War II, well, sorry, not two, World War I is like, they tell you something about the Zimmerman telegram and then boom, there was a war. And you're like, no. It's like some archduke got assassinated in Magic War. And it's like, yeah, that was not it. Lenin explains the reason behind World War I in one sentence. It is a war between the robbers of Germany and the robbers of Britain, and the winner gets to decide who gets to rob Turkey of their oil. And that's still every war. Yeah. So that is why so a lot of people in the West are extremely bad at having a dialectical understanding of the world.
So we oftentimes hear about contradictions, and they talk about when the contradictions get so great that revolution becomes necessary, or they talk about contradictions in general are the thing that brings about change. Whether it always amounts to a revolution or not, that's another story, but it always amounts to change when the contradictions. Can you talk about what that means? Help me understand. Is that like the American dream? We're all going to do great, and then all of a sudden you realize, no one's doing great, or very few are doing great, or whatever. And it's like the contradictions of that lie become so great that we finally make changes because we can't stand the lie anymore. Is that kind of a way of looking at that?
Let's actually go much more basic than that. So
okay.
If you've taken Logic 101, you get like P and not P will always be false because P can't be both true and false, right?
Mm-hmm.
P and not P. So like, let's say P is the sky is blue, and not P is the sky is not blue. The sky cannot be both blue and not blue at the same time. So that in the most basic sense is a contradiction, i.e. two things that cannot be true at the same time. But so now think of this as a process. So it's not going to be like an on switch and an off switch. It'll be like, when there's so in society, we're not like an on switch, off switch that can go like that. So there has to be a transformation. So the one example of contradiction of capitalism that Marx talks about is that, well, if you have a factory and you pay your workers 50 cents may not be a lot. But if you have 10,000 workers and 50 cents from each, you're pocketing $5,000 every week by lowballing your workers. Mm-hmm. So then what'll happen is that under capitalism, the bosses will always, the owners of the machineries will always want to kind of squeeze, have lowball the workers. But then if you lowball the workers, who's going to buy the crap you make? And that's a contradiction, is that the population getting poorer and poorer, and then there is a time where there is like, you can't lowball them anymore because they're not going to come to work. And so that's like a contradiction, and that has been historically that has been resolved in many different ways. The worst way, in my opinion, is the Germany 1930s model. Yeah, one of the best ways is definitely the Russia 1917 or the Cuba model, which did not involve whatever. So so that's what it is. Like, so for example, so then you'll have, for example, you'll have more, as capitalism goes on, they'll say that everyone can have a decent life, but then you'll have more and more people becoming poorer. That's called proletarization. And so again, you can't have, there's a time. So I guess it is a process where just those two things cannot be true at the same time. And so human society somehow will go through a process of change.
So you have been very, very good. You're the only person I know, honestly. And I see a lot of people doing various things in the space, but you're the only person I know, and this is why I love you so much. You're the only person I know that literally snags people up out of nowhere and teaches them Lenin at night. You're out there having them, you talk about an issue, they kind of give you their idea of what they think is going on, and then you select a reading for them that matches where they need to be or what they're thinking about, and helping them go from a basically non-theoretical perspective to a theoretical perspective. And in this space, I have found my opportunity to be on with you is one of the high points of my time learning lefty stuff. It really is. It's become really important to me because it shows that you can do the reading, you can learn a lot of things, and as you start to see the world differently, you can have a different impact on the world. And so what you're doing to me is really super important. For those of you who don't know, Esha runs a late night show called Late Nights with Lenin, and she'll invite a guest on. And
anyone can be a guest, and my dream is your MAGA hat wearing awkward uncle and turning him into a Leninist.
It's so amazing. And so I guess the question I would like to propose to you next, and we kind of talked about this in our agenda here, is what role does once they learn what Lenin would do, once they hear about this stuff, what role do you think having a theoretical framework provides in terms of looking forward? I mean, we're looking backwards on one hand for the history here, for understanding the theory, but then as we look forward, what role do you think theory plays for leftists, for regular leftists, Jane, like you said, even the MAGA hat wearing uncle? What role does this have in us really, really changing society the way we'd like to see it, to having that really, really massive change in terms of the balance of capital and labor and life moving forward? How does that play into organizing for the future?
Well, the first thing is, like I said, you can't solve what you don't understand. So if you can't see the world as it is, you can't solve any problem because you're solving I don't know what you're doing. That's like the first thing. The second thing is, okay, so Antonio Gramsci wrestled with this idea for a long time. He was in an Italian fascist prison for like God knows how long. And he wrote these things called prison diaries. And for him, it bothered him a lot because it was like, wait a minute, there are all these people who are very struggling. For him, what bothered him is like, there was a group of Italian peasantry that like Mussolini could just like bribe, and then they were shooting at the workers, and he couldn't like understand what was going on. And then he determined that, so in our society, there are things that are directly involved with making things, or modes of production. Production is making things. Somebody tried to like own me on Twitter with this, and literally Karl Marx kind of said something similar to like production is making stuff. And then you have, why do you have a priest? Why do you have churches? They don't make crap. Why do you have schools? Why do you have universities? Newspapers? A lot of those, they don't make crap, but you have it because the idea is that these things are part of society that reinforce the way stuff is made. So you have a priest that says, oh, work hard, and then in heaven, you get to go to heaven if you work really, really, really hard. Or you have the economics department at certain Ivy Leagues that say, hey, if you have austerity and let like all these people starve, somehow, and if you privatize the water, somehow magically your economy is going to get fixed. But I'm talking about Bolivia and Harvard, of course, with the economics department. And why do you have that? That is in order to reinforce the existing base or the manufacture of consent. So, if you don't, because the hegemony within the American society is extremely reactionary, just not trying to solve the same problem, they are trying to get you to not solve that problem. If you don't have a strong theoretical background, you will not be able to even see through the hegemony, let alone fight it.
Very good. Okay. So if I'm coming back to this, I know you see this. I know. Let's put it this way. My eyes do not deceive me. There is a huge amount of reactionary lefties out there that if you didn't know better, if they didn't break out their red card, you'd swear they were a brown card. You would swear that they were part of that Weimar moment.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm telling you right now, I'm seeing people that carry the communist word around, and I watch their behavior and I say, I don't know about all that. I'm kind of thinking the F word fits here. I'm thinking it's kind of a little bit more fash than calm. And so this idea here, in my opinion, and this is kind of where I'm at with this, when you bring up the role of history and you bring up the role of theory and you talk about you can't fix a problem if you don't understand it, right? When I see people revert to fascism, thinking that somehow or another that is the epitome of being woke, they're now so woke they can embrace fascism, right? I see that and I say to myself, you don't know theory. If you did, you wouldn't do this. Now, I do understand the working class making up the 99%, so to speak, if we want to look at it from a pure class perspective.
Class actually have real problems to solve in their real life. So they're actually pretty, they most of them naturally develop the skill of dialectical materialism. It's the you know who I'm talking about, the Brooklyn boys or the upper middle class that need that skill.
Right. Okay. So, but within that space, though, right, you can see that a lot of people, especially a lot of our friends in the alternative media world, okay, that put stuff out there, and you see them overly sympathizing with the brown shirt, black shirt type deal. I wonder if they would be so quick to do that if they had theory inside of them, if they understood what they're really fighting for, that it's not good enough just to be anti-establishment, that there is a whole, because like, okay, so if you burn it all down, history shows us after Rome, we lost literacy for a long time. We became warlords once again. We went from organized to absolute disorganized. We went into the plague. There was a lot of things that happened.
Burn it down after you get socialism, they're going to sanction you and you won't have new material, so you're screwed.
Well, but you get my point that there's no, in my opinion, without having that understanding of history, these people are in their minds envisioning that all you have to be a lefty is be anti-establishment, and that simply isn't true. A
No.
nihilism can come in a fascist face just the same way. Can you talk about that for a second?
Oh yeah. I mean, like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. A lot of these people, a lot of it is based on a deep misunderstanding of the mechanics of the world. So, for example, I know one person kept on insisting to me that what was it? That Cold War propaganda, that it was only Cold War propaganda that stopped the American workers from like being communist, and something like that. And then I had to like ask him, so why wasn't the Cold War propaganda enough in Indonesia? Why did they have to murder 3 million people enough so that the rivers turned red with blood? What was the difference? Okay, so, oh no, I know why. Okay. I was saying that this is just the truth of how imperialism works. I was saying that, yes, the average worker in the US has a different life than somebody in the third world country. And this person kept on insisting that if I called it like that, they're not privileged and that they were just brainwashed by Cold War propaganda. And I personally think having CBS Evening News translated into Indonesian is much cheaper than having like the army go kill 3 million people. But why didn't it work? Because Cold War propaganda only worked because of the material reality that was constructed post-World War II. Like they had the nice little suburbs and the wages went up a little bit. I mean, it didn't matter that you were looting from Indonesia or like having child slaves mine your cobalt, whatever you needed back then. You got cheap goods. And because the lifestyle, like because the reality, you as an American worker kind of matched the propaganda about how communism being evil and blah, 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 and all these victims and oppression, it worked. If you went to an illiterate farmer in Indonesia and told him like, oh, if you work hard, you're gonna be rich one day, that propaganda, he'll just say, get the bleep out. But then what you then realize is that the reason why the bourgeoisie have created a world where the American worker is a little bit has a different lifestyle is because they need you for like one task, and that is the military. And it was funny because one of my favorite authors, Douglas Valentine, he's written a lot about the CIA. And I said, somebody had said less than 1% of Americans are in the military. And I said, these 1.1 whatever number is what keeps capitalism alive. What you don't realize is that if you're in America, capitalism is actually super hard to keep alive all over the world. You just don't realize it. That's why the U.S. military bases in Korea, and then they mined what do you call it? The DMZ. You have to have the U.S. military bases everywhere, doing coups and wars. And literally, in order for capitalism to collapse in most places in the world, all you need is just to pull back the U.S. military. And like for somebody in Congo who's a child slave, it's not like it just when you just like give them some breathing room, they literally default to something like socialism but something that works within their culture.
Yes.
Right? So they are misunderstanding their task. And so they think, oh, if I'm patriotic, I'm going to be able to attract more workers. Really? No, because if a worker is patriotic, he's happy with status quo. You're not going to be able to attract more workers. You're going to be attract a lot more, and you haven't. And the second thing is, you probably have not spoken to an actual worker, because I have, and I see very little patriotism there. So it's like, again, idealism. It's their imagination of what a typical white worker is, and yeah, and so a lot of them are like, yes, that is why, like, they're coming up with these reasons without, as though America is in like a little vacuum, and no, we're in the world, and the world is the way it is for a very specific reason. I mean, we've spoken about this with the monetary system, the Bretton Woods, the IMF, the World Bank. Yeah, so a lot of these, so you have to understand that, and then you'll understand why Cold War propaganda was sufficient in the US and not in Indonesia.
Well, it's funny because, I a gentleman that I happen to follow and really have a great affection for, Jason Hickel,
I love Jackson. I've had him on my...
Not Jackson Hinkle, Jason Hickel. They're two different beasts.
I don't know Jason Hickel then.
He's a South African eco-socialist that writes on the need for degrowth and the fact that the global North owes the global South reparations, basically, for plunder. And he's an amazing man. And he really broke down the whole way that the WTO, the IMF, etc., worked together to privatize entire countries, literally strip them of their resources, burden them with crazy debt,
including water.
If you go back, you go back to your and my interview when I was on your channel when we were doing the final stages of capitalism, right? Imperialism, right? That final chapter that we did, the conclusion chapter. And Lenin talked about it right then and there, the exact same thing 100 freaking years ago. And here we are today. It could have read like it was a current events novel, like it was straight out of a real paper, which brings me to our final part of this story. And that is media. When I read What Is to Be Done the first time, Lenin's great little pamphlet that came out way back in the day, I was just completely overwhelmed with his dress down of all the pop-up media. He was like, hey guys, you guys, all these pop-up media, this isn't good for us. I know you think it might be, but it ain't. And the reason is that you don't have the discipline to provide real socialist insights. You are straying all over the board. And this is why Kerensky even exists, basically. I mean, went through this whole thing. Can you talk to me about Lenin's vision for debunking propaganda and proper journalism?
Oh, yeah. So there's where to begin? Okay, so the thing is that so you have to first, like, a lot of different workers are going through a lot of different problems. He calls them struggles, problems, whatever. It might seem separate to you, like, oh, you don't have minimum wage, but you guys can't get to the, you don't have a bus stop here and your water is on fire. But then when you examine it deeper and deeper, you'll realize that, oh, the reason why your water is on fire is because the company you work for is dumping whatever crap that makes water catch on fire. And so then you realize that, oh, you guys have, and so he wants you to look at problems that workers have that are separate and knit them together so they see the common understanding, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah, so he talks about literally knitting together the struggles, and that's what he means. So it has to, and there has to be some local stuff, and then you can't, of course, and it has to have global, like everything that's going on in the world, it's also affecting the worker. So and it has to be done from a worker's point of view. I actually have some amazing old periodicals of from like America way back in the night when we had every union had its own newspaper. That was when you got the what's that, Golden Age? No, what was what was it? New Deal. But I'll share with you the one that do you want the I'll give you the Ohio Socialist. It's adorable. I'm just sharing the link, but feel free to look through it later and share it with people in the chat or whatever. But they did that. They had this like cute little Patreon too about the worker, like where you could like, and Lenin also said that with the newspaper, the idea is that you get like the money, he called it, money they use were kopecks. He said like like you need to have like a wide readership, so you need to have millions of people paying 50 kopecks each for your newspaper, and that is how you get the wide distribution, and you have a big network. And so his idea was to have like such a newspaper, and he said like the mere way of like being able to get back then, the logistics of getting the newspaper to the worker's hand itself showed that you had a network and you could then work on collective action together as a group. So that was his idea. So the newspaper was supposed to be like the organizer. So like, I mean, some of the ways they got the newspaper, it was illegal, by the way, is heroic. Like they had something where they got a printing plant in Alexandria, Egypt, and then they smuggled it through the Ottoman Empire, through Persia, into Azerbaijan, where they then spread it. Another one is that they had like there was this yacht with a lot of sympathetic cooks. The cooks agreed to smuggle Iskra, the newspaper. So what they did is they wrapped it in some kind of tarp or maybe, and then they put it in the shore of St. Petersburg, and fishermen literally fished out these newspapers and distributed it. So, I mean, we don't have that problem. Oh, and we also don't have the problem of illiteracy, like 81% could not read. But yeah, so, but unfortunately with the digital age, I don't think the mere distribution of newspapers means much, other than we all have good information and we all know how to think, which is absolutely necessary. I mean, every time I go through a New York Times article, I just like huff and puff, and I can't really read it without blowing a vein or a Mada. I haven't been able to do it. Like I can't watch a Mada segment without blowing. It's like they like she'll sometimes give you information, but then she's just remember, she's just a script reader. So she doesn't even know half the information that she's not giving you. And I mean, let me give you an example of how. Okay, they found a mass grave, in Poland. Is that a good or bad? Well, I think it would depend. If it's a mass grave of Nazis, you'd be like, yeah. But if it's a mass grave of people, you'd be like, oh my God, it's horrible. But if they just like don't give you the context, you don't know what it is, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
New York Times has done this. There's a really funny one where they were like, they found a mass grave in Yugoslavia, and it was a mass grave of Nazis. And I'm like, who cares? So I tweeted out this because it was just funny, the way New York Times did it. And I mean, any article about my favorite one with Bolivia, where they were like, Evo Morales was propped up by the growing economy and low unemployment rates. And I'm like, that sounds like was really good at his job, and so that's why people wanted more of him. I'm going to find it. They literally say he was propped up by the high rising wages and low unemployment, or something like that. And it's like that.
Well, it sounds awful. It sounds absolutely awful.
Yeah, that's not propping up. That is people. And so you just what you have to remember is that in order to get hired in New York Times, you have to be the kind of person that never goes beyond the boundaries, and you're not curious. You don't wonder. You're very uncurious, and so
that's why Paul Krugman writes there.
Yes, and and what's his face? Bedbug, Brett. Is he still right? Really bad article. Op-ed. The op-ed has to be banned. I'm sorry, it's just horrible. I would ban the op-ed of. I don't know. After the revolution, we're definitely banning op-eds because, oh my God, what's the point of having these like boomers write about David Brooks is another bad. Oh God.
Oh my God, he wrote something horrible the other day. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, like I remember once he wrote about how he was met a high school friend who he took to a sandwich shop and she was overwhelmed by the sandwiches, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Well, so let me ask you, like, as we morph into yet again another political theater season, and we
should
start to see the
not
Democrats.
We should not be on their schedule.
No, well, bingo. But you understand, though, that sadly, because of the nature of propaganda and the power of the big five mass media propaganda outlets, the establishment outlets, we are really running against we're like salmon swimming upstream. I mean, it is really, really, and there's lots of grizzlies putting their hands in there trying to snatch us as we're going up the stream. How would you advise people who are trying to be good lefties, who are trying to learn theory as they watch the political theater unfold? What advice would you give to them so that they can discern better?
Don't watch the political theater is the first advice. I would say that if you are a journalist, we should be like doing research and don't try to cover something on time, but try to do an extensive coverage. Rania Kaliak, she does a great job of that. She's not like on their clock. She's like, watch all of her. She's done great things on Lebanon and Syria and now Ethiopia. I would say, like, for me, I'm just like, I think I'm pretty good at spotting color revolution. So that's what I usually focus on but oh God, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. It doesn't really, like, I don't know how to explain it, but like
I think I know what you're gonna say.
Congress and the Senate is all like, that doesn't matter, like, because nothing means anything. I don't know how to explain it. Like, you can't.
It's theater. It's pure freaking theater. Is what it is.
So you have to kind of look underneath the matrix. So don't care what, like, if you just remember nothing useful happens in the imperial core, you'll understand not to follow the minutia of whether or not the Build Back Better part. Oh my God. A lot of people did not realize it, but it was like a new Cold War with China for their Belt and Road Initiative. So I'm not saying that it had some good provisions, but there was another agenda for the Build Back Better, which was to try to be like actually stop like people in Asia and Africa from actually addressing climate change with greener infrastructure, whatever, because and so like even that, like I noticed a lot of lefty reporters. I'm not a certain Sirota was very involved in the minutia, and I'm just like, and then he gets really, his outrage is genuine. He gets very outraged about the Democratic Party acting like the Democratic Party, but we've been through this before. This is how they'll always act, like the scorpion and the frog. And then the scorpion says, if I bite you, we're both gonna die. And then the scorpion behaves like the scorpion. Like, that is the Democratic Party. So
I think with Sirota, the one thing
I
that
love Sir.
I keep my I was
His outreach is genuine.
you want him to get it, don't you? He's so smart on so many things, and you want him to cross over and realize the Dems blow monkey chunks, but we just can't quite get him there. But yes, keep going.
It's heartbreaking. I'm like, dude, just yeah. And he's really distressed about this. I can see this, but it's like, yeah. So I guess my thing is that Americans should, okay. So if there's a like okay, of the crap that they're doing here in America is like this. Under the world, it's like, oh my God, it's horrific. Like, I can't tell you it is horrific. And so I would have to say that it's not, like, a lot of people were tweeting out last week. They were tweeting out, it's not okay. It's okay not to have an opinion on Kazakhstan. It's like, no, because it's mostly Bill Clinton that kind of went in, privatized everything, looted everything, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, no, it's not okay because your government is doing all this, like, horrible, is doing a coup there. So it's not okay not to have an opinion. You need to be more informed. And I really think that if you start following world affairs a little bit more, you will see the hand of capitalism and all the things that's going on. And you will see that eventually it'll come back here locally, but you will understand it in a different way. And then when you see that happening locally, you're better able to be informed. And I don't know, as for organizing, I think we just need to have people being able to be like, I honestly can't, I get horrified of the lack of basic literacy, as in, you know how to read, but you don't understand these words that have meanings.
Can't comprehend.
Yeah. Like New York Times can literally like say, I don't know, something horrific, like, oh yeah, they're dumping like something down they're dumping toxic acid down some river. But they won't say that. They'll be like, they evacuate the excess capacity of the factory through dispersing the chemical, whatever, toxic acid. Like, you know what I mean? You need to be able to see that and then realize, oh, they're dumping toxic acid down a river or whatever. And that kind of critical reading, I don't know. I just haven't been able to get to enough people to see enough people even doing that. And another thing is that because, second, there is no follow-up. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember, about 3 years ago, AOC and Ted Cruz both promised to get together to do a bill that banned lobbyists from having a job, from congressional members from having a job in lobbying. Did it happen? No. Nope. There was no follow-up. No, there was no, so a lot of times, like, the politicians will say really nice things, and then people are just like happy that it allegedly happened. But then when you read the fine print, none of it happened and there's no follow-up. And so I guess, I don't know. I don't know what, feel free to ask me any other, I don't know what to say.
Well, I tell you what, at the end of the day, I see the left right now in a real crossing point, a real juxtaposition of seeing electoral politics as a means of an opportunity, maybe, to educate people about socialist ideals. But I think people begging and pleading and praying that we'll get the right progressive in office, or praying that we'll get the right Democrat in there, I think history has shown us, and this is what this whole discussion has been about.
Check out the Ohio Socialists from 1903 that I just sent you, and they will explain why you won't ever get the right
All right.
Democrat.
Well, look, we're at the end here because of time constraints. So, Esha, I just want to give you an opportunity to tell everyone where they can find more of your work and let them know what you're doing.
Okay. You can go to historically.substack.com. We have once a week podcast episode, and then we have an article once a week about a topic in history. We can, and then check out our YouTube channel where we have Late Nights with Lenin Saturday at 10 p.m., where we read through some of the theory. And there's some few other projects I'd like to be involved, but we need more paid subscribers. So if you can become a paid subscriber, I'm trying to, so I don't know how to, okay. My ultimate dream is to write a book about a people's history of the USSR. But the thing is that everything, it's hard to debunk the amount of wrong that exists around you. It's so wrong, it just overwhelms you. But I am learning Russian for that. So hopefully we'll be. Да, я изучаю русский язык. I hope my Russian teacher.
Listen to you.
I hope he's not watching because he'll probably think I'll pronounce something wrong. Okay. Okay. And then, that's about it. I want to also do some people. There's a certain word. We'll call it the C word, if you know what I mean. It rhymes with Amsky. He's been coming to too many interviews and saying really wrong things. So I feel like we need to do a deconstruction of that certain person. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. All right. Well, listen, folks, I want to thank you, Esha, for joining me today. This has been a blast, as always. I hope I can have you back on soon because
Absolutely.
I love talking with you. All right. Well, look, folks, we're out of here, man. I got to get back to work. That's these lunch hour deals, man. It's fun. They're short, they're quick, but this was great. And I really appreciate it, Esha. Have a great day, everybody. I'm Steve Grumbine, the Rogue Scholar. We're out of here. Yeah.